Today on the podcast, I have another soul sister, Lauren Nikohl. We met in Costa Rica, and today she's bringing all the deets. She is a songwriter, producer, DJ, plant medicine advocate, author, and she has a new album coming out. So we're going to be getting into all of that today. And if you want to know anything and everything about plant medicine and how it can help you, today is your podcast. Hello, everyone. This is Meredith with a Y, and I am your host, Meredith Willett. Today, we are going to go deep, changing lives, and I am giving you the keys to the castle. Lauren, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to talk about all things you. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course. So you and I met basically in an airport on a Costa Rica TikTok creator, spiritual creator retreat. We had never met before. We had never spoken before. And it was just the week of a lifetime. And I just want to bring all of you creators that I got to meet that week to my listeners and share your stories. So let's kind of dive into, first of all, the fact that you have an album that you're focusing on releasing in November. We'll get back to that. But you just got a book on Amazon, and I am so excited. I ordered it first thing this morning. I sent it to one of my clients immediately so they could get their hands on it. So let's get into the book because that is the hot topic for you right now.
Yes, thank you. So it's called Psychedelic Guide and Integration Journal. And I'm just really passionate about plant medicines. I tend to refer to them as plant medicine instead of psychedelics because I think a lot of people have this paradigm around the word psychedelic and all of the government propaganda that kind of goes along with how they've tried to shape that narrative.
Yeah.
So I had my spiritual awakening actually with magic mushrooms. It was like 2016 and I was out on Malibu Beach. And before this experience, I was atheist who grew up Christian. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I was pretty happy with that worldview at the time. But basically, with that magic mushroom experience, I went out of my body and I experienced unity consciousness. I experienced basically having a soul, and I was being shown the multiverse and how it worked, and also reached at one point kind of a dimension, if you will, that I would maybe refer to as heaven, or perhaps just the in-between place that we go in between our lives. Mm-hmm. Because I saw my dad and my sister there and remembered oh yeah, I've been here many times before.
Wow.
And so that was a very powerful experience for me. Coming out of it, I kind of realized my purpose in being on Earth at this time. And it just really opened up my entire perspective. And psychedelics for me have just been really useful tools. And I think it's a tool that might not be for everybody, but for me, it's really helped me to uncover the shadow, so to speak, to work on my own self-love, to just expand my mind and understand kind of the universe and how it works. And
let me interrupt you because you and I know what we're talking about, but there's going to be a lot of housewives in Ohio right now that are this is not for me. I don't know what she's talking about. When she said she was Christian, I was on that board, I was on that plane, but then she had me I was on a beach in Malibu, doing plant medicine. So let's kind of go back for a minute. So you were raised in a very, normal Christian household. Mm-hmm. And so what brought you to that moment on the beach where you were okay, I'm going to try this. A. B, were you afraid? C, who were you with? D,
Mm-hmm.
did you have the tools that you have and are offering to other people in this book? So like I kind of want to break down like what that first experience is, because I was lucky enough to have you there from
Mm-hmm.
my first experience down in Costa Rica when I tried plant medicine, and Bianca. But let's kind of break down a little bit like what was that like and why were you doing it? Were you doing it for this spiritual awakening, or were
Mm-hmm.
you doing it just to trip? Because I'm saying if it was me, I'd be like, I just want to try and feel like what this feels like, which I think that's how people usually
Mm-hmm.
view drugs, quote
Yeah.
unquote.
Yeah, so I mean, growing up, just like most anybody else, I definitely saw psychedelics as like, oh, it's this hard drug, it's this like thing that's gonna make you crazy, or all the propaganda that is brainwashing, honestly. Um, but I think my sister actually had tried psychedelics before me, and so that maybe opened me up a little more to the idea because she's like a straight A student, very like well put together, but she like did a lot of research into these things and basically realized that like mushrooms are like one of the most non-toxic kind of drugs, quote unquote,
Right.
that you can take. And so I met some friends out here who were my roommates for a year, and they kind of introduced me and my partner to psychedelics. And so the first time going into that experience, like I definitely didn't think I was going to have some like spiritual awakening. I had no idea what I was really getting into other
Mm-hmm.
than like my friends said that it was a great experience and like it's like fun and colorful, and yeah, I thought maybe we would just like see some colors, like have a good time on the beach. And yeah, I was just kind of open to the experience because I had previously just talked to other people that had such a good experience with it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, at first, honestly, I had a little bit of, I guess, like anxiety kind of coming up into it. But as soon as I like drank some water and then kind of told myself internally, I was like, all right, just like let this experience be what it's gonna be. So essentially as soon as I like stopped resisting and I
Yeah.
just surrendered, that's when the experience turned into like I had like this giggly phase where me and my partner were like looking at each other's faces, and you can just like see like every pore in their skin, and we're just laughing our asses off because I don't know, just things get really funny
Right.
sometimes. And I think you kind of just realize the quote unquote cosmic joke,
Right.
just to not, I don't know, not to take life so seriously, because life really is like the universe experiencing itself as like a dream within a dream, and just for the sake of experience. And yeah, it's not really meant to be taken so seriously.
Right. So when you and so if anyone doesn't know, I haven't really talked about it on here yet, but when Lauren and all of us were down in Costa Rica, we did I think we did cacao, which
Mhm.
is a form of like a plant medicine, and then we did peyote, which was my favorite.
Mhm.
We did LSD, which did it really kind of nothing for me, but it might have
It
been
was a
too low of a dose.
microdose
Yeah, it was
though.
definitely a microdose. And then we also did what else did we do?
Gram of
Oh,
mushrooms.
grandma mushrooms.
Mhm.
And I enjoyed that. And then I also have that at home for microdosing. So I am, and I am in dire need of taking a moment and doing so, because I can feel my heart like chakras closing, every single day of kind of getting back really deep into the three-dimensional. Okay, so let's talk about the difference between, like, let's say drugs, if you will. So marijuana, cocaine, what's like meth, whatever, right? Versus
Mhm.
what we're talking about, which is plant medicine. What is going to be the difference? Um, the way you see it, the way it affects the body,
Mhm.
what's the benefit, because like people hear drugs and it's just like you said, it's this big ball of negativity, or
Mhm.
it's I'm going to do pot marijuana in lieu of alcohol. So it's to get screwed up. It's to get wasted, if you will. And so what's the difference between getting wasted and plant medicine? And let's do that. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I think part of it is the intention going into anything. Because I think even with alcohol, I mean, I'm currently not like as big of a fan of alcohol, but I feel like even with that, like if you use it intentionally, like it's a whole different experience than like just using it to get quote unquote fucked up.
Right.
Um, and I think also the difference is the consequences of the substance, because when you take something like LSD or shrooms, the consequence is very much like, at least, I mean, most of the time, and for me and for many people that I know that have taken these things, the consequence is like you growing as a person, or you like learning more about yourself, or you feeling more present and more like happy. And I think sometimes the consequences, I mean, I guess I can't really say because I haven't tried, but things like opioids or meth or heroin, the consequence is very much like people get worse in their mental health and maybe get paranoid or like get addicted.
Yeah.
And psychedelics definitely are not addicting because they're the type of thing that you take and then it shows you like all of like the shadow inside of you that you need to heal.
Yeah.
And that can be like overwhelming sometimes. I mean, beautiful healing work for sure, but it's like something that you're not going to want to take every single day because
It's a
it can
work.
be a lot for sure,
Yeah.
depending on like the dose and like your intention again. But yeah, so I think like if the consequence of taking whatever substance you has, like whether it's like it's a positive effect on your life or a negative effect on your life, I feel like is just the biggest difference.
I definitely saw it for myself, and kind of as I sat and watched and was with you guys, it was definitely like alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, food. Those were like to check out. And I
Mhm.
felt like plant medicine is to check in. So
Mhm.
it's definitely like a going deeper. It's a getting more in tune with yourself versus I want to
Mhm.
get as far away from life as possible with the alcohol and that. This is like I want to go deeper. I want to get more in tune myself with myself. I want to get more in tune with my issues and problems. I want to
Mhm.
get and go deeper with all of these things. And one thing that I, like you were talking about, even with the alcohol, that I found so mind blowing. And I even like am thinking about like, even when I go on my walk, I love the way that you guys would say, all right, let's set an intention. Let's set an intention. And it was so funny. One of my favorite things that we did in Costa Rica. So we had this day trip planned, and we went to climb and go under this climb through this whole jungle literally and go to this waterfall. And the idea, we were going to do the peyote next to the waterfall, you know, and have this whole experience. And of course, like, I did not have the right shoes. I was wearing flip-flops going over rocks. Like, it was death defying, right? And so when we set our intention, so we finally get to the waterfall. It's absolutely beautiful. We're taking photos. We go sit in this little tiny area on rocks, and we're setting our intention of what this peyote is going to shift in us, right? And I think this was
Mhm.
my first experience, if I remember correctly. This was our first plant medicine that we did all week.
Mhm.
And so we set our intention, and my intention was to let go of anger.
Mhm.
And so, you know, we took it, yada, yada, we're chewing it up, like, you know, and so now we're making our way back out of the jungle through the water and the rocks and the rivers and climbing down all these stones. And my left knee starts absolutely killing me. I'm like, son of a bitch. I hurt myself. I must have twisted it somehow. What have I done? It's this whole thing. And I'm getting in my head because my left knee is killing me. And then we go cross this river and it starts to rain. And if you've ever been in the rainforest slash jungle during a rain, first of all, it's beautiful. And we were right next to this bamboo forest too. So we've got the river, we've got rocks, we've got like no people hardly anywhere because it's just us and it's just our little group. And we're standing on this ledge. And then Lauren starts to teach us and lead us into this qigong, right? That am I saying it right? In this qigong, and it's raining on us, and it's so freaking surreal. And then all of a sudden, it hits me that the left knee is liver, which is anger and resentment. And
Oh.
yeah, and so I didn't hurt myself. It was all of that anger was literally leaving my body by way of that knee and by way of healing the liver, which is anger. And so what I was asking for was happening, but my brain wasn't checking in with the fact of you're having a physical response from releasing this anger. And so then we were driving around and someone says, "How are you guys feeling? Is it hitting you?" In the back of the van, I go, "I don't know what's going on, but I just am so irritated with all of you." And someone said, "What were you trying? What was your intention?" I'm like, "To let go of anger." And it was like, "Oh, well, it's happening." Like it literally was like coming out of me visually, physically, energetically. Like I could feel the anger coming up at people I was not angry with at all. It was just like you could feel it in the sinew of self. And it was so gentle and it was like funny. And like it was almost like watching myself release anger, which kind of like removed it from being a personal anger, which was so cool. It was like, oh, look at Meredith releasing anger. Like, look at her go. So it wasn't like painful necessarily. It was just, it was very, it was just very gentle and fun to release anger. I don't know how else to describe it, but it was really, really cool. And for me, that was my favorite plant medicine was a peyote, probably because it was so profoundly tactile. Like there were these very specific and obvious things going on in my body that I could like touch. And I did love too. We did, Lauren, then we went and did another qigong, but now we were on the beach and we did the mushrooms, and then we just kind of like lay there and we walked around the beach. We had our own, free time to do however it experienced for us. And I remember standing at like the edge of the water, looking back at the land. So it was beach. And then, right there is all the trees and a mountain. And I remember seeing it. It was like almost being in the Jim Carrey movie with not the dome. Was it called the dome? What was it where he was like inside of a dome? I can't even think of the name of the movie.
Ventura?
No, that era, it was, I'll think of it, but it was almost fake. It would look like a backdrop. Like there was like, and these trees have been painted here. And then behind there, you could see, it was just very, very cool.
Truman Show?
The Truman Show.
Yeah.
Good job. And so it kind of makes you feel, like you said, like open and like it's not as heavy. And what's so funny about alcohol is such a depressant, which I'm, I drink alcohol, but it's such a depressant and it makes things heavy. Whereas plant medicine, which I love that you're on this podcast because I know so many people are like going to be clamoring to get your book. Plant medicine makes things lighter. It's heavy, but it's light because it's like, here, I'm going to show you this really shitty thing, but it doesn't matter, but it matters, but it doesn't matter, but it matters, but it doesn't matter. And so we're going to just play with it and see how that can expand inside of you. So like in your integration journal and guide, how would one, like, so they're listening to the podcast today, they think that this sounds intriguing. What's the next step? Like for someone that's not in Costa Rica today?
So you'd want to like find, some way to find the medicine, hopefully from like a safe, trusted source. I'm also a big component component of like testing the medicine. And when you are ready to have that experience, I definitely recommend like having a good, what's called a set and setting. So that just means that you want to be in a good mindset the day of the experience, like ready to embark on this internal journey and in a good setting. So like somewhere that you feel safe, that like maybe somewhere like quiet and peaceful in nature, or even just like in your home, like laying in your bed. Like sometimes I've had experiences where I just like put on an eye mask and like really just try to go like internally. Yeah, and I mean, I go through a lot of my like trip tips in the book, and intention setting is definitely a big piece of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think intention setting is such a powerful thing for like almost anything in life, but especially with plant medicine, because putting your intention out into the universe really helps shape what you're going to experience. And I will say sometimes the plant medicine, it's like intelligent. It has its own consciousness. And sometimes it will give you like what you need, not what you want.
Mm.
But I do think putting that intention out there is still like going to help kind of like direct your experience. And like you can even ask the plant medicine to like be gentle with you, like please give me a gentle, loving experience.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and after the experience, I think integration is just like such an important part of that, because like the plant medicine will show you like, you know, what maybe needed to be uncovered within you, and it will show you all these new perspectives. But then after that is like when the real work begins for you to like process that and integrate it and figure out, okay, how do I make sense of this, and how do I apply this to my life? Like, how do I embody the lessons that I learned?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I go over like a bunch of integrative kind of journal prompts in the book so that you can really like internalize everything that you learned and really grow from it.
So we were just talking and you said, yeah, that's a microdose. So what's the difference between a microdose versus like, hey, I want to trip today and get just like totally messed up or go deep? Because I know some of our friends will talk about, oh, I take a third of a capsule every 3 days, or I just took 5 capsules and thank God my husband was there, you know, or whatever. And so there's very different ways of using plant medicine. Not in Costa Rica, like in your daily life. I know a lot of people on TikTok talk about microdosing for depression and anxiety. And I know like a lot of scientists and the medical profession is starting to study psychedelics and plant medicine to be used in antidepression and anti-anxiety and these different quote mental illnesses that they're seeing. And so let's talk about for a minute, how can plant medicine, why would plant medicine, and I know you're not an MD, but or a psychologist, why would plant medicine help any of that stuff? Like what could it possibly, like if someone's listening to this and they have severe depression, maybe it's clinical, maybe it's not, or anxiety, how does plant medicine help in that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I personally think that like things like depression and anxiety, they're very much like your mind getting kind of into this like one track mind space of like seeing maybe everything as negative, or anxiety is like always like assuming something's going to go wrong or fearing the future,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like plant medicine really helps those things because, again, it just really helps to shift your perspective and to help you like see things in a whole new way. Because I think, yeah, a lot of mental health issues are just that maybe maybe we grew up with a bunch of limiting beliefs or the traumas that we experienced, and it makes us believe like, oh, because it happened in this bad way in the past, it's got to happen in this bad way again, and we just get like stuck in that paradigm,
Yeah.
in that like thought process.
Yeah. So huge.
Yeah, and plant medicine just really helps you to open up and to see things in a new light. And I think microdosing has just been especially helpful for people because it doesn't give you that full trip experience. You're not seeing visuals. It's not really going to affect your day. I mean, of course, it depends on the dose and like what you've eaten and all these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I've learned about the science behind it is that the excuse me, the psychedelics are helping your right and left brain hemispheres to like work together instead of
Mm.
like being very separate. Yeah, so it really helps you to connect the right and left brain hemisphere so that your mind is working like a lot more cohesively. And yeah, I mean, I think when I've taken microdoses, it just really helps me feel a lot more like present, like I'm a lot less in my head.
Yeah. Isn't that
And
so weird that presence is not necessarily in your head, but yet in your body? That's
yeah,
one thing I noticed when I was being very good about doing my microdosing every few days is I was able to feel more deeply. Like I talked about on our trip, like I'm like, I have never cried this much in my life. Like I was
yeah.
so able to be connected to you guys and present and not overthinking or overstressing or over anything. Like I was just able to be Meredith,
Hmm.
present in my body, feeling my feels, listening to when you were singing, because this woman has the most amazing voice ever. Like it's breathtaking. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that's one thing that I noticed for me is it's getting out of your head and in your body is one of the things that really was transformative for me when I was being diligent about taking my microdosing of my mushrooms. And like I'm sitting here thinking, like, okay, I get done tonight at 5 o'clock. I could probably, because you also don't want to take them too late and be up all night. Like there is a bit of like, okay, I have to drive the kids, so I don't really want to microdose because you like I one time drove on a microdose and it was like it wasn't fun. It was not a good idea in my opinion. Like I didn't realize it was going to hit the way it did because sometimes like you said based on what you eat or don't eat, and I had not eaten but the time before that I did, so it affected me very differently on an empty stomach versus a full stomach. And so like there is like a happy safe zone of I don't have to do anything. I don't have to drive a car, but I also don't want to just go get in bed either. So, like for me, I know when I just did it recently, I needed to go for a walk. Like I had to go for like I had to be moving, digesting information, experiencing my body, experiencing the world around me. So, like there's definitely the difference between a microdose, but it still is getting you versus like, oh, I'm going to go deep here. And so that is using plant medicine, not necessarily for depression and anxiety control, but more as an experience of healing, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I do think some people go into those experiences wanting to heal something very specific.
Mm-hmm.
But you could also just want to go into the experience to kind of like improve your just overall like well-being, expand your consciousness, just to like learn more about yourself. Yeah, there's like plenty of reasons why you'd maybe want to try a plant medicine.
Yeah, 100%. So, and there are places to find this healthfully, safely.
Hmm.
You know, if you don't know anyone, I'm sure you can find available resources on Instagram or TikTok. Talk to people, reach out to people and see resources. Clearly we don't sell it, but they are out there and they are safe. So not only are you you just came out with this amazing book, but you are also a songwriter, producer, singer, and DJ. And you are in the process of producing and working on your album coming out in November called Ascend. So what is going on with that? And tell us everywhere, where can we hear any songs now? Is there any way to listen to you right now?
Yeah, so the first single off the album is already released. It's a song called Energy. And that song, as well as a few of the other songs on the album, were kind of started when I was like in a flow state and it kind of started channeling through. So, like the Energy song, I was just like out on a solo hike one day, kind of getting in my flow, like not being in my head. And I just started hearing like the entire song almost like, and I just knew, I had to start like recording it in my little voice memos. And
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I recorded that part, then like another part would kind of come through. And yeah, so it's been a really interesting process creating the album. And I started learning how to produce myself just over like the lockdowns because I had so much time and I really wanted to get more into that whole creative side of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And the title track of the album, Ascend, I actually started creating that track. It was like one of the first electronic tracks that I ever produced. And it was the very day after my first ever LSD trip.
Mm.
And so yeah, I'm really excited for everybody to hear all of this music. It's just all about like raising your consciousness, becoming more self-aware, living out of unconditional love, and yeah, just all of these like spirituality kind of concepts that I've been like going through in my own awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's been a really interesting process creating it because, sometimes the song literally channels through and I'm just hearing it in my head. I
Yeah.
mean, some of the songs I start in a whole different process. Yeah, it's been really fun and I'm just like so excited to finally have it out there because it's been a long time coming.
That's so awesome. I'm so excited to hear it. Is there anything on Spotify or is that going to be on your website?
Yeah, you can find it on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube.
Oh,
I
cool.
have like an EP out and a few other singles, but yeah, the Energy song is all about like the in our infinite nature as like spiritual beings, and that is out now.
So if anyone's looking too, her name is Lauren Nikohl, but it's spelled, the last name is Nikohl. And this is all going to be in the show notes. So if you're looking for any of her Instagram, or she's also on TikTok, any of the things, you can, look for her by way of her social media channels. So you also are currently, you have a residency at the Westfield in Culver City, where people can find you DJing every other weekend in the summer. And all that information can also be found on your Instagram at Lauren Nikohl. And so what are you doing when you're DJing? So you've got this book, you've got your singer,
Mhm.
songwriter, producer, but then you also are DJing. So like if someone wants to go to the Westfield, what kind of, experience is that going to be if they find you as a DJ?
Yeah, so the whole DJing thing kind of came around just in lieu of me producing my own music
Mm,
and kind of going into a more electronic kind of house realm. Because a lot of the stuff that I used to create was a lot more singer-songwriter, kind of indie pop.
okay.
But yeah, just throughout my time in Los Angeles, I really grew fond of the electronic music scene. And so I kind of realized that I want to create my act in such a way that's kind of a hybrid between DJing and live music. Because yeah, I love the EDM community. It's just like so full of love and kindness and good times. And so me and my partner actually started a DJ duo called Weekend Trip Music.
Okay.
And so we are doing like DJ sets in nature that kind of thing, for
I've seen
YouTube.
you doing that on TikTok. Is that where you're like actually like in the out in nature and you bring your equipment and you're doing stuff like in the mountains? Is that
Mhm.
correct? Okay, so explain that because that's super cool.
Yeah, so one of our favorite like production companies is called Circle, Cercle,
Okay.
and they produce these amazing like DJ sets in like amazing spots all around Earth. Like imagine like a DJ set at the Grand Canyon, if you
Wow.
will.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we just got really inspired by that and wanted to kind of recreate that in our own way. And so, yeah, we've created like a set in Joshua Tree National Park.
Mm,
And then our second set was on a pontoon boat on a little like river cruise. And yeah,
love that.
the idea is just to really create like good vibes
Hmm.
and just kind of, yeah, put out that good like deep house and melodic house kind of music. I don't know if you know much about house music, but
Well, I did listen. You did do the ecstatic dance too for us in Costa
yeah,
Rica. So I'm
yeah,
assuming it's sort of ish like that ish, like
yes,
it's kind of nice, good flow and be in
yeah,
your
it's just very
zone.
dancey,
Yeah.
very, yeah, good vibes, like, yeah. Yeah, so we, as Weekend Trip, are going to be DJing, yeah, every other weekend in Culver City at the Westfield Mall. And yeah, hopefully going on tour eventually and all those things.
So
Yeah,
exciting. So
I just have so
exciting.
many projects. It's, you know, we're we're making them happen though.
Yeah, but you know what? I back in the day, someone would have called, like that type of thing, and I've done videos on this recently, flighty or flaky. You can't figure out. But and I've explained, on video, countless videos, like it's not that. It's just we're living our best life and we're not in the generation of, hey, you've got a pension, you have to do this for 30 years. You're not stuck in a one track situation. You're allowed to expand yourself in many fronts. I actually just watched the J-Lo halftime thing. I think that was on Netflix. And she was doing what she was dancing, and then she became an actress, and then when she became an actress she's like, I think I want to sing, and they're like, what? Like, I thought you were a dancer and an actress. And she's like, I am. And now she did the songs at the Super Bowl. Like it's just, this is the thing, is we're dynamic beings.
Hmm.
And I feel like this is the first time in many generations ever, if ever, that we are allowed to be all the different things. And I love the fact that your generation is seeing that you don't have to stay miserable. And we all talked about that so much in Costa Rica, about honoring what it is that we want to do. I know I made so many changes in Costa Rica because of you guys inspiring me to, sorry guys, but raise my prices and, dump a partner, work partner that wasn't, good for me, and just making a lot of different changes for myself. And I know for yourself, like you made a ton of changes. Maddie made a ton of change. Like we all made huge changes on that, after that, during that 1 week trip. So like the fact of the matter is, like, we're allowed to expand and try all the things and then change our mind if we don't want to do them anymore. That we talked about that too. Like I took all those classes in doing, past life regression. I'm glad I know how to do it, but I don't like sitting in a dark room for 5 hours. So not really, I'll do it, but it's going to cost you a fortune to have me do it for you. And I
Yeah,
think that's so cool about you guys, and us being together and inspiring each other to really listen to self,
mm,
and not to take ourselves so seriously. Like I think that my generation and my parents, like we've taken everything so seriously. It's kind of nice to get back to this, like a little bit hippie, like it's cool. Like it doesn't have to be so damn serious.
yeah.
Like everyone, like we don't all need to have an ulcer. We don't all need to have like sciatica because we're so stressed out. And you know what I mean? Like, so I just love spending time with you guys, and you know, just expanding in so many different ways. I just love it so much. So
I
cool.
think we're all like really embracing the fact that we are multidimensional beings,
Yeah.
because I personally like see it as like all time is happening right now,
Yeah.
and there are like infinite realities and infinite versions of like us. And yeah, just like embracing that multidimensionality, and yeah, saying like, you know what, like I can be this and that. It doesn't
And
have to
that.
be this or that.
Yeah. It's not exclusive. What was so funny when you just said that, I was literally watching your future self or another dimensional self sending you your songs. It's like you didn't just get it. It's like yourself is literally sending it to yourself.
Wait, that's really wild, because I have a song called Future Selves, and it was literally like channeled through like in a bath time meditation from
Mm-hmm.
like my future, what I kind of think of as like my Palladian self, or like
Mm-hmm.
interdimensional being kind of, yeah, like, yeah,
That's
that's so wild.
exactly. They're like, who do you think is telling you the lyrics and the song? It's you. You're
Yeah,
sending it to you.
yeah, it's so trippy.
So trippy and so cool. Oh, I just am so excited to just share you with all of my listeners and um go to Amazon. It's Lauren Nikohl, Nikohl, and her book again is Psychedelic Guide and Integration Journal. And you can get the ebook for $12.22. I ordered the hard copy for 12 or $22.22 just because I love a physical copy. I wish I was going to be out in LA to see you DJ because that would be amazing. But I know that I'm going to be able to see your album out there in on 11/11/2022, which is like, of course, that's how our whole group is doing everything. Like everything costs what it costs because of our lunacy in Costa Rica. We're all like, it has to be 333, 44, 44, 22, 22. So all of our prices are based on our Costa Rica chaos, which I love so much. But go out and get her book. And, you know, if you know someone, if you're connected to someone to see like where you can get some plant medicine or take a trip down to Costa Rica, there's many different retreats that are doing these types of hosting these types of events. If you want more information, and Lauren has a website again, which you can find her music, and her book also is on laurennikohl.com. Find that in the show notes. But thank you so much for being here today and sharing all of your wisdom and your experiences and all the good stuff. I so appreciate you being here today.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for being you.
I love it. And I cannot wait for us to get together for our next retreat. It's going to be so amazing, as per
Thank-
usual.
Yes.
Thanks, Lauren. Everyone, go check out her book and her music and all the good stuff. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. If you would like to connect on a more personal level, head over to meredithwillits.com or on Instagram at Meredith with a Y for behind-the-scene footage and outtakes. Please subscribe and come back each week for more Meredith with a Y. Thanks again for listening. Cheers.